Hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in to my story. My name is Harry, and today I want to share a personal story that I will never forget. At 60 years old, I live alone in a small, quiet house in New Jersey. As a retired engineer with 35 years of experience, I have built a stable and peaceful life. Every day, I spend time tending to my backyard garden, reading books and taking walks in the nearby park. Occasionally, I join a local book club to meet others who share my interests. Since my wife passed away 3 years ago, I have learned to embrace the quiet solitude of living alone. However, deep down, I still feel that something is missing, a companion to share life's joys, sorrows, and simple moments of growing older. My only daughter, Emily, lives in Florida. She always encourages me to step out and explore the possibility of a new relationship, but I had never seriously considered it. I wasn't looking for marriage or any kind of binding commitment. I simply wanted someone to enjoy life with, to share meals, have everyday conversations, and laugh together over the little things. One day, my neighbor, Anna, a lively woman who actively organizes community events, suggested that I meet Mary, a retired nurse who lived nearby. According to Anna, Mary was also looking for a companion to share this stage of life. Feeling a bit curious and not wanting to miss an opportunity, I decided to take a chance and open my heart. After a brief phone conversation, we agreed to meet at a local cafe. I had no idea that this meeting would turn into one of the most unforgettable experiences of my life. I never thought I would step into the world of dating again at 60. After 3 years of living alone since my wife passed away, I had grown accustomed to a peaceful routine, enjoying quiet days tending to my small garden and getting lost in the pages of a good book. But sometimes, even when life feels full and stable, there remains an emptiness, an absence that isn't always obvious but is always present. I wasn't searching for marriage or a complicated commitment. I simply wanted companionship, someone to share meals with, take evening strolls alongside, and exchange laughter over casual conversations. My daughter Emily had been encouraging me for a long time to put myself out there and meet new people. "Dad, you don't have to be alone forever," she would remind me whenever we spoke on the phone. I knew she worried about me, but I had never truly considered the idea, until my neighbor, Anna, suggested I meet Mary. Anna was an energetic woman, always busy with community activities and seemingly familiar with everyone in the neighborhood. One morning, as I watered my plants, she approached me with her usual bright smile and a twinkle in her eye. "Harry, I have someone I think you should meet," she said enthusiastically. Her name is Mary, a retired nurse. She's a kind, independent woman, and she's also looking for someone to share life with. I hesitated. It had been a long time since I had even thought about dating, and the idea of meeting someone new felt unfamiliar. But then I asked myself, why not give it a try? My life had been peaceful, but maybe I needed a small change, a little step outside my comfort zone. I had nothing to lose, and who knew, I might even find a true friend. After a brief phone conversation, Mary and I agreed to meet on Saturday morning at a small cafe nearby. Her voice over the phone was warm, confident, and mature. We exchanged a few words about our interests and retired life, and while I wasn't sure what to expect, I felt a subtle sense of connection. At the very least, the conversation eased my nerves about the upcoming meeting. That morning, I woke up earlier than usual. It had been a long time since I had put thought into what to wear before heading out. Standing before my wardrobe, I skimmed through my familiar shirts before finally settling on a light blue button-up and a blazer, presentable, but not too formal. Catching my reflection in the mirror, I chuckled to myself. Who would have thought a simple coffee date would have me putting in this much effort? I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early, chose a seat by the window, and ordered a black coffee. Watching the bustling street outside, I felt a mix of anticipation and uncertainty. Not fear, just a sense of stepping into something unknown. In the past, I had built a life with my wife, a life of routine and unspoken understanding. Now, I was beginning something entirely new, and I had no idea what lay ahead. Mary arrived right on time, not early, not late. She wore a beige blouse complemented by a simple yet elegant silk scarf. Her short hair was neatly styled, and she carried herself with confidence and ease. As she approached the table, I stood up, extended a handshake, and smiled. "Harry?" she asked. I nodded, and we sat down together. The conversation started off smoother than I had expected. We spoke about our past careers and life after retirement. Mary shared stories from her years as a nurse, the patients she had cared for, and the bittersweet moments she had experienced. I listened, then shared my own experiences as an engineer, the satisfaction of seeing a project come to completion and the unexpected emptiness that followed retirement. We laughed about the quirks of aging, aches from sleeping the wrong way, walking into a room only to forget why, and the little adjustments we had to make in our daily routines. Mary loved cooking and often experimented with new recipes in her kitchen, while I found joy in my garden, where I could spend hours tending to my plants. I started to feel more at ease. Maybe, I thought, this was a good start. There was nothing overly dramatic or romantic about it, but it was genuine and light-hearted, just the kind of connection I had hoped for. But then, as the conversation shifted toward more serious topics, I was completely unprepared for what Mary was about to say next. Her expectations, her conditions, things I had never anticipated, would soon make me reconsider everything. I started the date with a relaxed mindset. Mary was an interesting, intelligent woman with a certain confidence, something I had always valued in a companion. We shared stories about life after retirement, our personal interests, and the inevitable changes that come with aging. The conversation flowed naturally without effort, and I began to think that maybe I had met someone who truly understood the value of this stage of life. But then, gradually our discussion started to take a different turn. Mary set her coffee cup down, leaned slightly forward, and looked at me with a more serious expression. "Harry," she said gently but with hesitation, "I think we've reached a point in life where we don't want to waste time on unclear relationships. I value honesty and transparency, so I want to be upfront about what I expect." I nodded. I had always respected directness, and to be honest, I didn't care for mind games in relationships, but I had no idea that what she was about to say would make me reconsider everything. "The first thing," Mary said, "I want us to try living together for 6 months." That didn't sound too bad, I thought. At our age, getting to know each other in a practical way might be a reasonable choice. But then she continued, "To ensure that we are both serious, I want you to deposit $25,000 into a joint account. If after 6 months we feel we are not compatible, I will refund the money proportionally based on the time we live together." I felt like I had walked into a financial negotiation rather than a date. I tried to keep my expression neutral, but my mind was racing with questions. Had she been through some kind of financial betrayal before and was trying to protect herself? Or did she simply view relationships as economic agreements? I couldn't say for sure, but one thing I did know: love, or at least companionship, should never begin with a financial deposit. Before I could respond, Mary moved on to her second condition. "I've always dreamed of taking a month-long trip to Europe, especially to France and Italy," she said, her eyes lighting up as she spoke. "If we get along well, I want you to sponsor this trip. I will take care of all the planning, and you'll just need to cover all the expenses." I nearly laughed. A month-long trip to Europe wasn't exactly a small expense, and more importantly, How could someone I had just met ask for something like that? I wasn't against the idea of a romantic getaway, but that was something that should happen naturally, not as a financial obligation from the very beginning. I started feeling uneasy, but Mary wasn't finished yet. "The third thing," she continued, "if we decide to get married, I will take full control of our finances. Your retirement income will be managed by me, and I will provide you with a reasonable allowance each month." I stared at her, trying to determine whether she was joking, but she was completely serious. I was a grown man who had managed my own finances my entire life, and now someone I had just met was suggesting that I hand over complete financial control. And not only that, if I spent beyond the allowance she gave me, I would have to compensate by doing household chores. I took a sip of coffee, trying to mask my disbelief. I had met all kinds of people in my life, but never someone who approached relationships in such a transactional way. And finally, just when I thought there couldn't possibly be more conditions, Mary made one last request. "Regardless of whether we live together or get married, I want us to have separate bedrooms. I've lived alone for a long time and I don't want to change that habit." I understood that some older couples chose to have separate rooms due to health or personal preferences, but after all her previous conditions, this request only reinforced my growing realization. This was not the kind of relationship I was looking for. I had come into this date hoping to find companionship, a relationship built on mutual understanding and connection. But what I had received instead was a list of rigid demands that felt more like a business contract than a partnership. When Mary finished speaking, she looked at me, waiting for my response. I knew I had to decide right then and there. I set my coffee cup down, looked at her with respect, and said gently, "Mary, I truly appreciate your honesty, but I don't think I can meet your expectations." She looked slightly surprised, but then gave a polite smile. "I understand," she said simply. I paid the bill, said my goodbyes, and walked out of the cafe. A wave of relief washed over me. I had no regrets about coming to this date. If anything, it had reinforced something important, the value of listening to my own instincts. I wasn't looking for a relationship based on conditions. I was looking for true companionship, someone with whom I could share life's simple moments without pressure or financial obligations. And if I couldn't find that, I knew that the peace of my independent life was far better than a relationship that didn't align with what I truly wanted. I left the cafe with mixed emotions. A part of me felt relieved that I hadn't allowed myself to get caught up in a situation that didn't feel right. But another part of me couldn't help but feel disappointed. Not because the date hadn't gone as expected, but because I realized that in the world of dating at this stage of life, people often have expectations and conditions that are very different from what I believe a relationship should be. On my way home, I reflected on everything Mary had said. She was an intelligent, decisive woman who knew exactly what she wanted, but the conditions she set made the relationship feel more like a contract than a true connection. To me, companionship should be something natural, an understanding and sharing between two people who hold the same values. But with Mary, everything felt too transactional, too calculated. I couldn't imagine a relationship where everything began with numbers, a $25,000 deposit, a fully sponsored European vacation, controlled retirement funds, and even rigidly defined personal space. I didn't blame Mary for having those requirements. Perhaps she had been hurt before, or had gone through relationships that didn't work out, making her feel the need to set up barriers for self-protection. But I also had to be honest with myself. I couldn't enter a relationship where trust had to be measured in financial terms. A real relationship should be built on trust, respect, and simple moments shared together, not a checklist of conditions to be met from the very beginning. When I arrived home, I made myself a cup of tea, settled into my favorite armchair, and let my mind unwind. I thought about my life, the peaceful days, the quiet mornings watching the sunrise over my small garden, the afternoons spent reading in silence. I had grown used to my independence and freedom. I wasn't willing to trade that away for a relationship that felt more like a business arrangement than a true partnership. I also thought about other men and women my age who were still searching for someone to share the later years of their lives. How many, like me, simply wanted genuine friendship and companionship without ulterior motives? How many felt pressured to meet financial expectations or fit into a lifestyle they didn't truly want? I realized that at this stage in life, everyone approaches relationships differently, each with their own set of priorities and desires. The most important thing is finding someone who shares the same values. I had no regrets about going on this date. If anything, it reinforced what I truly wanted in a relationship. I wasn't looking for perfection, nor was I looking for someone to fill a void in my life with rigid conditions. I was searching for harmony, someone who could enjoy life's simple joys with me, someone who could sit beside me, quietly watching the sunset, without needing to measure or calculate anything. I looked out the window, watching the last golden rays of sunlight fade into the evening sky. I knew I wasn't alone. I had built a life filled with joy and peace, a life I cherished. And if one day I met someone who could share that with me, I would welcome them with an open heart. But if not, I would still be okay. Because I understood that my own peace would always be worth more than a relationship that didn't feel right. In the days following my date with Mary, I took time to reflect on what had happened, not with regret, but with a deeper understanding of myself and the values I truly cherish. At 60, I no longer feel the need to rush or force myself into a relationship just to fill the void of loneliness. I have lived long enough to know that an ill-fitting relationship can be more exhausting than being alone. That morning, as I sat in my familiar wooden chair on the porch, sipping a hot cup of tea and watching the first rays of sunlight shine over my small garden, I felt an unexpected sense of relief. My experience with Mary didn't make me lose hope in love or companionship. Instead, it helped me see more clearly what I truly seek. I don't need someone to validate my worth through money or extravagant trips. I need someone who can appreciate life's simple moments with me, someone who understands that happiness is found in the little things. I thought about the stories I had heard from my peers, those who had entered relationships out of fear of being alone. Some lost their independence, others compromised on unreasonable conditions, and some were hurt by placing their trust in the wrong person. I realized that at any age, we must hold firm to our values. A relationship only holds meaning when both people respect and understand each other, without one having to sacrifice too much just to please the other. I also came to understand that loneliness isn't always something to fear. It can be a state of peace, an opportunity to gain clarity about oneself. Instead of seeing it as a void to be filled, I choose to embrace it as a natural part of life. I still have my own joys, my favorite books, quiet mornings with a cup of coffee, and peaceful walks through the neighborhood I've called home for years. And if one day I meet someone who shares my outlook on life, I will welcome them with sincerity, but I will not rush, nor will I sacrifice my peace in pursuit of something that isn't truly right for me. I believe that a meaningful relationship is not built on conditions or control, but on connection, respect, and the joy of simply being together. I thought about the advice I would give to others at this stage of life, those still searching for companionship. Don't let the fear of loneliness make you settle for less than what you deserve. Trust your instincts, hold on to the values you cherish, and never enter a relationship that requires you to compromise your inner peace. As the morning sun cast its golden light over my porch, I felt lighter than ever. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing for certain. I will always choose peace, sincerity, and genuine happiness, whether on my own or with someone truly right for me. I set my teacup down and took a deep breath. After everything, I didn't feel sadness or regret about how the date with Mary turned out. Instead, I felt grateful for the opportunity to gain a clearer understanding of what I want and what I cannot compromise on. That encounter wasn't a failure, it was a lesson that strengthened my perspective on relationships at this stage of life. I realized that in love, as in any relationship, there is no absolute right or wrong, only compatibility or incompatibility. Mary had her own expectations and standards, and I respected that. But more importantly, I needed to respect myself as well. I am not looking for a relationship built on conditions, nor do I want to be in a commitment dictated by financial expectations or rigid demands. What I need is true companionship, someone I can talk to for hours about life, someone I can take an evening stroll with without making a detailed plan, someone with whom I can share simple moments without feeling judged or pressured to meet a list of expectations. Life after 60 is no longer a race or a journey where I have to keep up with anyone. It is a time to embrace peace, to live in a way that truly aligns with my desires without having to compromise on things that make me uncomfortable. I know that if I find the right person, that would be wonderful. But if I don't, I won't feel lonely or lacking in any way. I smiled as I looked out at my small garden, where the flowers were still blooming beautifully under the sunlight. I have lived a full and meaningful life, and I will continue to enjoy every moment of it, whether with someone by my side or simply on my own. I believe that at a certain stage in life, happiness is not defined by whether or not there is someone beside you, but by the peace that comes from knowing you are living in a way that truly fulfills you. If one day I meet someone who shares my outlook on life, I will welcome them with sincerity. But if not, I will still be content with the life I have built, a peaceful, complete life on my own terms.